Shalom and welcome everyone. This is an attempt, at least from my part, Jack Saunders, and
Hiram,
to speak about the idea and the principles of the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noah. It's come to our attention, by the way, that there are many videos and teachings on the internet, and especially on YouTube, that have made their attempt, by the way, to actually demonstrate that these things don't even exist. And of course, one of their main objections to it is that they can't actually find it in the written text. Right? It's not,
right.
According to them, it's not in the written text. So we want to present to you the idea that they are indeed in the written text. Maybe not in the list like you would have, like the 10 words or the 10 commandments, but yet they do exist, and we want to at least present that idea. Now, me and Hiram were talking about, by the way, just before we begin this video, we were talking about the fact that some things maybe are so obvious that they're really not obvious to people. For example, we were talking about this. Before the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, right? How many years, according to the Seder HaOlam, which is, the Jewish calendar that takes the date of Adam, with his actual creation, and counts forward to certain periods of time. And so if we actually started counting from the time of the creation of Adam up until Mount Sinai, how many years do you think have actually passed within that period of time?
2,000 something.
Okay. The Seder HaOlam says there's 2,448 years from the time of creation. That puts us, according to the Gregorian calendar, somewhere around the year 1312 BC.
Okay.
Okay? So, we have people such as Adam, and Seth, and Enoch, and Noach, Abraham, Yitzhak, Jacob, Joseph, just to name a few of these righteous men that lived during this period of time.
Right.
And what we have, at least in the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, is a history of the lives of these men prior to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai.
Right.
So our question becomes, if we go back and actually look at the text, and for example, we find a statement that God makes about Noah, and he says Noah is a Tzaddik, right? And if we go even back further, let's go all the way back to Adam, for example. When God first created Adam, all of a sudden, does he just leave Adam without laws? Now, and I ask people this question sometimes, and maybe I'll ask you, how many laws, really laws, do you find in the Torah from the creation? I'm talking about laws that were given to man.
Right.
How many laws were given from the time of the creation up until just prior to the flood? How many laws were actually, at least if we look at the written historical story
Within the text.
within the text, how many laws do we actually have?
In the written, we have the one about the command not to eat of the tree, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Okay, so we have that one, but we also have a positive one too, which most people kind of overlook sometimes.
Okay.
In the positive one, God actually tells mankind what he can eat and what he can't eat. That one's a little bit before that one, right?
Right.
So we have two stories about the creation of man, right? So we have the first story is kind of a general story about the creation of man, and then the second story is a more complex,
More detail.
more detail. In other words, he tells us about the creation of man, but then in the second story we actually get the idea of how he actually went about the creation of man, what form he used, the substance that he used to create him. And so we're told he creates him from dust of the earth, from mud, forms him a body, and he breathes the breath of life into him,
Right.
and he becomes a living nephesh, a living soul, made in the image, the Zelm Elohim, of God himself. Now, it doesn't mean that he has any kind of physical looks or forms, but there's something different from him from all the animal world, because the animals just came up out of the ground. So we actually have a positive law that says he can eat of all the herbs that bear seed within themselves, and that he is allowed to eat of any fruit tree that bears seed within itself.
So that right there will be two positive commandments.
Yes, well, it's actually one, but it's all about, we would say, a dietary law.
Gotcha.
You can eat this, so we just call that one law, positive law. Then we get to the one that you brought up, which is the law that says, in the day that you eat of that tree,
Yeah.
right, and that tree is referred to as the tree of knowledge and good and evil. That throws a whole complication in. Now, those verses, by the way, in that last one we just talked about, Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, are verses that are very familiar to us, because we know this is where the sages of Israel actually attach the idea of the 7 laws of Noah.
Right.
Back to to the precise Hebrew words that give that kind of definition. We won't go into that hopefully right now, but we want to expand maybe a little bit more.
Right.
So what we want to talk about is, okay, we have the creation of Adam. He basically, if we just look at the text, he basically had 2 commandments, but in reality he's got how many?
More than that.
Yeah, he's got more than that. According to what we understand, he actually has 6.
Right.
Maybe 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Maybe 7. But he's got at least 6.
We know for a fact, from the way the sages attached it, you can actually see within the context of the text 6 laws that should have been derived at.
Exactly. For example, we would have had a prohibition against idolatry. A prohibition, if there is this God that you're made in the image of, surely you wouldn't want to speak badly about him.
Well, right, because it starts out with Adam recognizing who God is,
Exactly.
who God isn't.
Exactly.
So from that point forward, man is aware of recognizing God in the proper state of mind rather than an incorrect way, which would become idolatry in the sense of thinking God is something other than what we know he
Is
has
not.
to be compared to what he's not.
Exactly. So what we see, at least, very limited, within the text, that it's quite obvious that man has more than just these few laws.
Right.
Okay. So.
Otherwise,
Okay.
which I hope we're going to get into this next.
Right.
How could man have been judged without man having something to go by to be measured with?
That we will get into. That's one of our really our main points of this whole discussion that we will actually get to. But we do want to talk about these 2,448 years that existed supposedly without man having anything written down.
Right.
Right? So we do know that God actually gave laws.
Right.
Even if we just say there's 2. Right?
Correct.
Because those are in the historical document of Bereshit, of Genesis.
Right.
You can eat of this, right? Herbs that bear seed, fruit trees that have their fruit within it. But this you can't eat, right? Which is the fruit of the tree of knowledge, good and evil. You can't eat from that tree, which may not be a tree or whatever, but we're not going to get into that.
Right.
Okay. So, if I was looking at seemingly 2,448 years of no information, and with regards how I should act as a human being, then how does God declare that Noah was a righteous man? How does Noah find grace, literally face grace in the eyes of Hashem after the flood? We still don't have any Mount Sinai experience, but yet we're told that God tells Abraham, walk before me, right? And be thou what? Just a pretty good guy? He's to be a righteous man. What does that mean? And what